Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. All right, so let me get to the right place here. Okay. All right, we have had the debate raging for years about how we can stabilize the economy and stop the flow of wealth to the top. It is presented as hopeless and unachievable. Yet the truth is that it is highly achievable. Not only that, but the solutions are remarkably simple in context. They do become more complex when combining the various elements which must be involved for true revision of our economy. There are multiple elements, however, not all elements need to be implemented at one time. If only part of these elements were implemented, the effects on the economy and society would be seemingly miraculous. None of these solutions are going to be discussed in mainstream media, which is corporate owned, and we can absolutely count on the fact that they would be fought against in the most violent, ferocious manner imaginable. We already see that happening. Look at the protests from, food workers and mine workers and so forth, and how they're being dealt with. One thing to realize is that very certain powerful entities benefit from the boom-bust cycles in our economy. I will go even further and state very clearly that every financial crash in U.S. history has at some level been fully intentional and planned. Anyone openly discussing realistic methods of stabilizing these cycles and preventing the highs and lows which destroy so many lives have and will become a target. First for ridicule, later, if any chance of success seems likely, they can indeed be placed in very real danger. Think about it. Bringing stability to our economic system means making enemies of the most brutal, violent, powerful people in world history, along with their invisible armies and assassins and sycophants. Just mindless sycophants. So taking on this concept is a dangerous proposition. Yet it is mandatory that we must take on the concept of stabilizing economics. Our societies, our countries, our lives depend on it. One of the biggest issues we have to understand is that we are taught, indoctrinated, brainwashed into believing that these cycles are normal and necessary. They are not necessary and definitely not normal. These cycles are contrived and brought into being consciously, purposefully. I have addressed certain ideas in previous videos as how shortages in supply do not cause prices to rise, not by any significant degree. The major overreaching reason for price increases and inflation as a whole is brought about by capitalist greed. Absolutely no other factor has as much influence on inflation as that greed. That inflation causes very real human suffering and even death, while providing ever higher levels of hoarded wealth to those that manipulate inflation into being. The past 18 months have been the clearest illustration of this fact, as millions of Americans lost jobs, incomes, health insurance, and housing during a pandemic. In the exact same time frame, we have seen the most rapid, expansive, gargantuan flow of wealth to the smallest number of people in world history. Many of us have heard statements in the past that these cycles are not necessary. However, the statements are not often combined with realistic and actionable concepts on how to achieve breaking these cycles. In fact, some so-called plans of the past have been put forward which were not realistic at all. I'm of the opinion that some of these proposals were intentionally fraudulent and intended to be ridiculed for the sole purpose of discrediting any and all proposals which may oppose the existing system, leaving the demoralized masses to believe that these cycles are indeed necessary and must be accepted. Right now, I'm going to ask you to imagine what a truly stable economy would be like. When you try planning ahead for your own future, your assumption is always that the economy, that your position is going to be stable. So imagine that the economy is stable not just for 8 to 12 years before the next crisis occurs and wipes out all of the efforts and sacrifice that you have put in, but truly stable. Then the next crash a few years later with the same result, and the next crash, and the next crash throughout your life over and over. What would it be like to not have to work overtime or multiple jobs just to make ends meet? To not have the absolute terror that tomorrow your job or even your profession may no longer exist. To not fear reaching retirement age, only to find your retirement investments and savings have been decimated, blown up in smoke by the whims of the stock market or devoured by predatory, dishonest capitalist investment bankers. I never hide the fact that I consider myself a socialist, but that is not what I'm speaking of here. What I'm speaking of is still capitalism, but with realistic controls imposed upon it, which keep the system stable and reliable in the long term. The ideas I intend to put forth would not stop you from working more or investing more to try and gain something more financially. You could definitely do that, but you would not be forced into doing so and have it all taken away by no fault of your own. Nor would you spend your life spinning your wheels and getting nowhere. To present this properly is going to take a series of videos. I tried coming up with a method to include the concepts all in one video, but it wound up being unrealistic and still do all of the concepts justice. I presented some of these ideas in past videos on YouTube, but in this case I am presenting them together as a series along with additional content in a comprehensive manner to illustrate how they work together, even though each one can be taken separately. Economic and financial discussions are generally framed in arcane language that is fully intended to leave the general public feeling lost, confused, uninformed, helpless, and hopeless. That language is meant for the initiate, priests, and sycophants in an ideology which demands subservience. In recent years, the general population has become increasingly aware of these deceptions, such as the fight for increasing wages, the fight for 15, and for universal health care, Medicare for all. In every case, we are told these things cannot be done when they absolutely can be done, and we realize they can be done. Yet there is far more which is rarely discussed, if at all, which we need to be aware of and enter into the popular conversation. Throughout this video series, I will be addressing individual topics not just for discussion, but including very realistic solutions for each issue. If we build entire movements around these solutions, we can change the narrative and we can force realistic and positive change which will benefit all of us, not just domestically, but globally. For me, this video series is taking on what will likely be the most complex task I have ever attempted, and that is saying a lot. Formally and informally, I have studied economics since 1987, and this effort is going to bring together most of what I have learned, what I have learned in that time in an abbreviated format. So please stay with me as I present each of these elements to bringing a stable, secure, and reliable economy which would stop all of the booms and busts we experience into being. All right? And which destroy, and these booms and busts destroy so many lives and the planet in the process. So, as I said, please stay with me and follow this series, subscribe to my channel, and let's have discussions on this. That is the purpose. And virtually every video that I put forth, I tell people, share this video and talk about these subjects. So that's what I'm going to ask for people to do now, is share this video, talk about these subjects, and each video in the series. Now, I will probably be putting out other videos. You know, I will label these as part of the series, and I'll be putting out other videos in between some of them, because this just takes a lot of work, and my time is limited, and my resources are limited. But I'm going to be working on this very hard to bring this about. And I've got the first couple of videos partially already completely or partially written out, and I will be starting with the very first one tomorrow. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. If you can, please donate $1 a month to help expand the channel, and I will catch you in the next video.